So you're currently tuned into TBD on the live stream or on KCSB FM 91.9 in Santa Barbara and netnetradio.com Tijuana. I'm joined by my friend Lightalk, and today we have Melissa, aka MJ Guider, and we welcome her to the show. How you doing, Melissa?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
How are you guys?
we're doing well.
Sir.
Just hanging out, prepping for summer and stuff like that. Speaking of, how is New Orleans right now? What's it like out there?
It really just got pretty hot yesterday. It was unseasonably not very humid up until a couple of days ago, which is really what makes it unbearable in the summertime. It's just
Yeah.
this like
Hmm.
totally oppressive humidity. So it wasn't really until yesterday that in the morning when I walked out the front door, it was like, here we go. Um, so it's coming. I know that like the summers here, they're just endless. So you kind of like
Yeah.
steel yourself to it and you're ready to just be sweaty and disgusting for months. And
Yeah.
I think I'm ready for it, but I say that every year and every year it gets harder
Yeah.
to like just deal with it for months on end. But I'm sure in California you know what it's like to have that heat.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily like humid heat. It's the dry, like a very dry, just like blistering heat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're getting baked.
Yeah, it's we're pretty much just getting baked, and I've definitely been like to the East Coast for summer and stuff, and that's a totally different ball game. Like I don't know what I dislike more. I remember one time we went camping in like West Virginia in the summer, and I just remember it being so humid, and I was like, I've never experienced a climate like this before. How do people live like this? Like I just
Yeah.
remember constantly having to like, go like this because like my clothing was just like sticking to me and stuff, and I was like, this is so weird, dude. Like.
Yep.
It's just
That's what it's
interesting.
like. I had an old roommate describe it once as being like you're inside of a mouth. It really is just like you're just like sealed in like just a very like damp, like the air is thick with how
Yeah,
humid it is, and you can't be outside for 5 minutes without like yeah your clothes are sticking to you and your
yeah,
hair is sticking to you, and
yeah.
and you just have to get back inside.
Is that a thing too when it's really humid, your hair gets like frizzy or something? Is that a thing? I don't
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, like
Okay.
I
Yeah.
have like pinned straight hair, but like when it's humid, it just like goes and does something totally different, and
That's so
there's nothing you can
interesting.
do about it.
Yeah, that's
It's
crazy.
tragic.
I just imagine everybody walking around in New Orleans with just like static hair, like just all over the place.
Yeah, everybody just looks kind of messy for a few months.
Yeah.
It's all right. We're used to it.
That's sick. So I guess we can jump into some questions here. Maddie, did you wanna start us off?
I guess I will. So, very recently, announced a nice new label called Modemain, which is, while not directly tied to Kranky, is kind of running in the same spirit as the labels that Wendy and Carl and Grouper and Benoit PLR have all done, kind of spread off on their own stuff. But how did you find your way out to Kranky out there in the mid 2010s?
It was just I I had some friends who who were on the label, and they liked what I had done prior to my first LP, and when I finished the album Precious Systems, I had given it to Mike Jones and sort of to listen to, just like, hey, I finished this record if you want to check it out. And they passed it along, thinking like, oh, well, Cranky might want to hear this, and they liked it. So that's pretty much how that came to pass. But I'd been a fan of the label for years, and they put out so many amazing records that I love.
Hmm.
So it worked out really
It's
well.
Yeah.
it's interesting that you bring up the Belong record because I've seen it pop up in other spots. The two folks who run Geographic North out in Atlanta have both cited that record kind of linked those two guys together, and they were putting out early Belong material as well. So it was kind of interesting because that's really like the probably biggest New Orleans act they'd had up to that point. And at that
Yeah,
time, also you were doing stuff with Constellation Tatsu out in San Francisco, the tape label, and
yeah. They put out my first EP, Green Plastic, back in early 2014.
mm, and then at least with kind of working with both of those labels, which it can seem, I guess, now very just email oriented or kind of very casual, something that just happens somewhere else. How did it though in any way influence how you've approached or wanted to kick off Mode Main?
Not really. Modemain is something that I've been thinking about wanting to do a label for a while, talking to friends and collaborators about the label idea for a while, and not everything that I do and want to do is going to be like an LP
Mhm.
or like a really like more proper release that's just like a music release. Like I wanted to do something that can branch out into visual art, into video, into dance and movement, and have like bring other people in. And my kind of um, dream for it is to, maybe someday it'll be like a collaborative. Maybe the more people get involved, the more it kind of becomes like its own thing, and in a sense kind of runs itself. And um, so it really was just like, I want to be able to have the freedom to do all kinds of different things. And my interests are really varied outside of just music. Like I'm a designer and I do illustration and I kind of
Mm.
dabble in a lot of different stuff that not necessarily things that I'm expert in, but I have friends who are, so I want to get them involved. And um, in the spirit of the same kind of idea that a lot of other cranky artists go and release music on their own labels.
Yeah.
Um, in that sense, it's similar, but I never want it to be like this is the Melissa Guion show and this is just going to be all my music. Like I kind of hope that it kind of takes on a life of its own and becomes more of a collective effort.
Yeah, that'd be super sick. So I believe you had, when we were messaging through like Instagram DM and stuff, you had mentioned you were working on like a video or something like that, a visual piece. Is that going to be something for your label?
It's sort of. It's actually for something that I assume would be announced pretty soon, but it's not to jump the gun on that, but
Yeah, yeah,
it'll
yeah.
be part of a show toward the end of the month. So
Okay, okay.
um, I guess keep your ear to the ground for more information about that. But
Yeah.
it will be available to see pretty soon.
Sick. So, I guess one more question about that. Do you have anything planned for your new label other than what you just like released and stuff? Do you have anything else in the works?
No, not at present. I kind of want it to be something that just evolves organically. So as
Yeah.
things come up, then I can attach this name to it, or as I get ideas
Hmm.
that make sense to fit under the umbrella of this.
Yeah.
More, I want it to be a conduit for ideas, not just my own, but in working with other people. So I don't necessarily want to overplan it. I have like tons of ideas for things I want to do, but I never like to kind of like show my cards and then
Yeah.
have it be like, okay, well, I've told everybody about all the stuff that I haven't even started yet.
Yeah.
Um, so there's plenty of ideas kicking around, but nothing definitive.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as we all know, coming from like DIY and stuff, the best way for things to happen is organically. I'm really stoked to see what you come up with. That should be really sick.
I'll keep going down the line, I suppose, because at least with the label, though, it just came as a bit of a shock to see two releases in an inbox come so suddenly, and then also this one that isn't even out yet, Temporary Requiem. It announced it turned Sour Cherry Bell, and then the previous single into a trifecta. But all of these pieces were, being worked kind of in that same 2017 to 19 timeframe, and it almost seems I'm interested in this one because of the kind of flux that it might provide for these other works. And I'm wondering, when you were working on all of these pieces, were you even certain that an album was going to unfold? Did you just kind of assume like I'll keep working on tracks until something comes?
Um, I usually just work on tracks until something comes. The temporary requiem stuff was um something that I had to kind of get together in short order because it was commissioned as a collaboration with a dancer friend of mine, and the show had a specific date where they were going to do a workshop performance. And so I needed to have, I think at the time it was like 45 minutes worth of music within a couple weeks. And so when I finished that, I was like, oh, well, this is kind of like, um, it could be something that I could release, but I didn't necessarily want to release it at the time because my goal then was to finish another record. So I just kind of like put it to the side and use the energy that I kind of gathered up by working on that to start really focusing on the record, which I had kind of had a stop start working on up to that point for a little while. And then, like I kind of have said when I'm talking about Temporary Requiem, it gave me a lot of ideas for the new record, and it kind of served as a good like testing ground for a lot of the things that I ended up developing into music for that record. So even though everything was kind of worked on simultaneously, like it was always kind of compartmentalized. So in the middle of working on the stuff for Sour Cherry Belle, I started doing the songs in Matanzas, and I always knew like, okay, well, I'm working on this kind of in the middle of these things, but this feels like something else. So as soon as I kind of got to a stopping point with that, I put that aside too, and I thought, okay, that's something else. Back to the record, and I kept working on the record. And it wasn't until the record was done when I knew, okay, this is the record, and I had these other things that I kind of knew, okay, these are two other things. And what I had originally planned for 2020, which like all 2020 plans were just like not
Oh, no.
exactly
Yeah.
going the way that we
Mm-hmm.
meant for them to go. But I was going to release them after the record came out, but the record was delayed a little bit because of COVID, and then I just didn't have the artistic like fire at the time to
Mm-hmm.
go and like make these things materialize. So I just kind of sat with them until earlier this year. And I was originally just going to release them both at the same time on the same day, just like, here, take these things. I'm done with this music.
Yeah.
But I decided to be like a little more strategic about it, and at least give them each a little bit of space so that they can have, be taken on their own. Um, but it was never like a thing where I was just like working on like a big old soup of songs,
Mm-hmm.
and I had no idea what any of them were going to be until everything was done, and then I put them into compartments. Like while I was doing each thing, I knew, okay, these things are together, and then these things are together, and then this is the record. And each thing has its own personality and its own mission, and and I know that they're all connected, and I always knew that they were all connected, but not in a way that felt unclear.
Mm-hmm.
So so I did want to make sure that the record was like upfront, like, okay, this is my main statement, and then I have this over here, which is this, what I have to say over here about this thing, and then this totally different thing that serves this purpose. And they're like, I call them a trinity, which works out really well
Yeah.
with the whole temporary requiem
Mm-hmm.
theme, but it really kind of is, it forms this little pyramid of ideas that I think are all connected. And once I move past that, like I feel like I'll have made some what's the word? I'll have made a clean break with like this era of things, and I
Yes.
can
Yeah.
try something new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, it really, again, is wonderful to like it actually have culminated in an era, because the album came out just so it's really nice when you get a message from Kranky that says there'll be an album, and you just say, oh, it's the first one in 4 years, okay. But there's so much more behind it.
Yeah, so while you've described bass, drum machine, some effects, computer, and my voice, have been the core of the sound since the very beginning. In your music videos, the blurb for Temporary Requiem and your sound, I've noticed some movement, or I've noticed movement, especially dance is suggested. When you begin working with ideas, are you thinking of like abstract dance movements or patterns or for trance?
Not necessarily for me. I mean, I'm not a dancer. I think I took dance for a year when I was
Yeah.
6 or something, but I've always just kind of like to dance. There's like, something about dance music that's really like when something hits you, you just kind of have to move regardless of what you're doing, even if you're just
Yeah.
sitting in your chair at your desk, like kind of makes you, feel this like motivation to move in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the idea of dancing, in working with my friend Anne Glaviano, who created the known mass show that Temporary Requiem was the music for, um, she really expanded my understanding of what dance is. Like dance, like I'm dancing right now. If she
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
was here, she would say I'm dancing right now. And so and I think that really plays into a lot of how, you know, the spirit of how I approach, making dance music, because it's not necessarily like, it's not going to sound like the dance music that you might hear at a club,
Yeah.
but in a way, to me, it's dance music because of the way that you relate to it, and how it makes you want to move. And I don't have like the training to really properly explain that, but um, it's something that really clicked and made a lot of sense once I was working with Anne and the dancers in that show, where I got to see like people actually moving to music that I made that might not even necessarily ever be construed as dance music, but it's dance music. Like
Hmm.
these people are dancing to my
Yeah.
music, and there's a way to relate to it and to have your body like be part of the music that is really outside of like the traditional understanding that I really came to appreciate in
Hmm.
working on that show and in approaching writing dance music since then.
This um also again great. It reminds me right now, Fly Pan Am, the Constellation Act, they also have a live album of their own kind of version of dance music in the same kind of realm doing that. I can see a lot of those characteristics mingling. I think that's a really fascinating way to put it. Oh man.
Yeah, that's sick. So recently the spiritual aspects have begun to pierce through in your music as well. Does this influence chart through your time post Catholic high school as you moved into like more DIY music and stuff?
It was something that I went to Catholic school for like 17 years.
Hmm.
And you just kind
Wow.
of, in the time that you're just in school and having to sit in church and in religion classes and all that
Yeah.
stuff, like all of this sort of like the ritual aspect of it and the stories and just like all the things outside of, what you usually think of as, like being, I'm going to church. Like I did that stuff because it was all part of my life, as being in that school and doing, you know, being in choir for so long, you just kind of like go through the motions. But it wasn't really until college when I started like singing these big mass pieces with
Hmm.
choirs and like feeling this sort of like really powerful expression that, was some hundreds of years old, um, mass written for like some specific thing,
Yeah.
but we're still here and we're still going through this
Hmm.
ritual of performing this thing, where I kind of started to appreciate the things about it that weren't like the face value, like religiousness aspects of it, um, but enjoying the rituals in a different way, and then appreciating kind of like these really beautiful expressions that this spirituality has prompted in artists, for centuries.
Hmm.
And it's something that I hadn't really thought about for years until I was asked to do this piece.
Hmm.
And because her Anne's project is called Known Mass, and she's done several of them for years. And the one that I wrote music for was specifically about a church that used to be um, near just outside of New Orleans, but it was shuttered after Katrina. And what she was trying to do was kind of create this invisible church and be in the church. I thought like, oh well, I have like years of experience
Yeah.
of like being in a church and
Hmm.
doing liturgical music and religious like, rituals are like kind of deep back in my brain somewhere. Like I'm gonna dredge all this stuff up and use it to create this piece. And up until then it was something that I really hadn't thought about for so long. So it was really interesting, um, kind of revisiting that and
Yeah.
tying it into some of the research that Anne had done for the the dance part of the piece,
Hmm.
which incorporated spirituality and mysticism kind of well outside of your like Catholic box of things.
Yeah.
And that made it really interesting because there's all of these interconnected stories through all of these different cultures, and we really like pooled a lot of ideas into what ended up being this piece that like really reframed a lot of old stories and made them, a little bit more exciting in our current lives than when we were just sitting in religion class when we were 12.
Yeah. That's great. Maddie, did you have anything else you wanted to add? I think that just about does it for all of our questions that we had written up.
Well, we of course probably I think have a couple more, but The one thing I was probably getting off of that, oh my God, what was I gonna go off of? It was with the choir stuff. So when you're doing vocals though for these albums and for the other works that you're doing, where do you kind of naturally play off of like the sound of a space's reverb from that? Or
It depends. I mean, I obviously use reverb extremely liberally. And I love the sound of a really big space, but I'm rarely in a really big space. So I have like a lot of different effects that I use to get that sound. But I'm always kind of trying to create, you know, it doesn't sound that natural, the amount of reverb that I use, but the
Mm-hmm.
idea is, of course, to make you feel like you're just in this like huge
Yeah.
thing in this like giant place. And um, so with the vocals, you know, you think of like medieval music and like choral music, and you hear them in like a cathedral, like in these big, beautiful open spaces with, super tall ceilings and having this resonance to it that you cannot get in a concrete box like my practice space or
Yeah.
in my room here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that is, a lot of the time the idea is to create like something that feels like um, kind of harkens to this choral tradition where you want to create this largeness, and I have like a real propensity for density in my music. Like I really like am drawn to really large, like thick sounds, which sometimes I really have to fight against to try to get some contrast. But I think a lot of that is really deeply rooted in spending like so much time in so many choirs, and that being a really formative part of my musical life, and being very important to me in terms of like how I view um, harmony and melody and rhythm, and like everything about my approach to writing music like is probably indebted to that sort of choral experience.
That's amazing. Maddie, should we jump into some fan questions now?
I think we have fan questions, although we are the fans in question here.
Yeah.
So, but these ones I think are a little more loose or fun. Um, at least because so the music videos that you have done, which have been fun to watch and kind of combine a lot of great visual stuff, and then the colors that always go back to purple so vividly. But in a lot of, I guess what I want to know is what's your favorite dream tour setup? How would you think you combine some stuff if you could?
Oh wow. Tours, I haven't toured that much. Um, I really have a really limited experience as far as like what it can be. I've seen, really beautiful shows set up where it's specifically like, like in a church, and you're creating this like beautiful, like really like what's the word? Like you close your eyes and like go to sleep, and it's like part of the experience. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
all these different ways to approach performing live, and I in the past have approached performing live as like I want to make something that's really difficult to do on my own. So I'm going to make this as complicated as possible.
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring other people in, because that's the way that I'm going to be able to replicate this idea of like what I want a live show to be. So I have had people tour with me. Mike Wilkinson and Emily McWilliams have toured with me in the past, and that's been really wonderful
Yeah.
to have other musicians on the stage. But a dream tour experience, um, I would love something that is very casual and where I get to enjoy the spaces that I'm in. Tour that I did, or a tour and a half that I did in 2018 and 2019, was with Thou, and they're wonderful friends of mine, and they are maniacs on tour because they book shows like back to back, and it's really like um, a packed schedule so that they
Yeah.
can do all these wonderful things and
Mm-hmm.
play like all these really cool shows. Um, but I think I would like a different experience where I can actually just like leisurely like travel through some place where I can spend a day or two and have a meal and then roll up to the show, and there's no
Yeah.
technical
Yeah. Yeah.
difficulties,
Yeah.
and the sound person accepts the amount of reverb that I want, which is never how it goes. Um,
Is that actual
and
like
yeah.
debate though about the amount of acceptable reverb in a space?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I guess the problem is, the more reverb you put on the mic and have going on the stage, the more you're setting yourself up for like some really horrible feedback in the club, and
Yeah.
that's sort of like every conversation that I ever have with a sound person. I don't ever think that I've really got across exactly how much reverb that I want, because they
Yeah.
never really believe me that I want like way more than they want to give me.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also like I put a lot of reverb on my instrument, and like reverb bass is like a sound person's like nightmare. So I
Yeah.
roll up and I'm like, I'm here to make your night hell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, but a lot of the time it ends up being okay, but a lot of the time it ends up not being okay. So I think my dream tour would be one where every night the sound is perfect and I don't have to worry about not sounding the way that I mean to. Um,
Yeah.
and that would really be like a huge like weight off my shoulders where I could really enjoy playing, because playing live is not something that I necessarily um itch to do that much. Like I enjoy
Hmm.
it, but it's my favorite thing is to produce the records and to make the
Yeah.
music, and
Hmm.
that's kind of like the top tier of my enjoyment level of this. And I like performing live, but it's not as exciting to me as actually making the record. So
Hmm.
I've always kind of wanted to view it as something else, like it's its own thing. Maybe it's not going to sound anything like the songs on the record, but it's going to be, I hope, something worth being there for, and
Yeah.
that's always the goal. So yeah, dream tour, no technical difficulties, everybody has a good time and is glad that they came.
Um,
And
I was sorry, I was just gonna add on to that, but so I'm just like curious, do you have any like bad like tour stories, or like maybe not bad, but just like crazy tour stories that you want to share?
Um, well, the first tour that I went on with Thou was in the winter time,
Yeah.
which is, I don't know why we did that, but we went like from New Orleans kind of like up to Dallas and then through Colorado, and then we kind of like angled up toward the northwest
Hmm.
in like late November, early December, through like Utah and Wyoming and Idaho, and it was
wow.
like really, really cold, and
Yeah.
we're driving through like snowy mountains and like
Yeah.
icy interstates. And I think there was one morning where we woke up in Laramie, Wyoming, and it was 2 degrees, and I
Oh,
was like,
Oh
why
oh
my
are
my
we
God.
God. Are you guys like
I'm
sleeping in the
not.
van too, or like are you guys staying in hotels or anything? Like,
No, we stayed mostly between like people's houses because they have friends all over the place. So we
yeah.
would either be at someone's house, or depending on, like I said, their scheduling is usually very jam-packed. So like there would be some
Hmm.
nights where we'd finish the show, drive a few hours, stay at a motel, be there for a few hours, get up early and drive again, because the whole drive would be like 12 hours or something crazy.
That's
Um,
insane.
so mostly we were in places. There was only like a couple of times where we were staying in a place where it wasn't like, this is fine, like I'm good
Yeah.
here. But you end up on the road, like sometimes you stay in a place that's like pretty grimy, and
Yeah.
and somebody's roommates don't want you there. It's one of those like
Oof.
rolls of the dice that you accept when you're doing a DIY tour.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna say.
mostly I think the thing that was crazy about that tour was that it was just the dead of winter, and
Yeah.
not, I was just not
We're going.
prepared to be like white knuckle driving through the mountains, trying not to slide off the road in our huge van.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you guys go through Colorado by chance for that, or?
We did. We played in Denver. We might have
Okay.
played another show in Colorado, but we definitely played in Denver.
I was gonna say, dude, I mean, even just like the Midwest area, like in the winter, like
Oof.
that's brutal. Like that's kind of crazy you guys did that. Like, as a Californian too, I'm just like I can't even imagine like, yeah, just snow is crazy. Just the winter in any
Yeah,
place other than like California or something is just like insane conditions to me.
yeah. We're not used to that
Yeah.
here. Like we get snow every like 3 or 4 years, and it's only like enough to go look at it, and then it falls on the
And
ground
then
and it's
it's
gone
gone.
because it's
Yeah.
not cold enough for it.
Yeah.
So to see like solid ice like on the highway, and then like being like really like just driving through mountains, like it's beautiful, but when you're like when it's like snowing hard,
Yeah.
it's terrifying, you
Uh-huh.
know? So that was something that I was just like totally unprepared for. I actually bought a coat, like just to have, I
Yeah.
didn't own a proper coat that would be sufficient for that kind of weather. Um,
So you
and
bought
I'm
And
so glad that I
no
did.
one in Thou said to get a coat. No one implied. It's gonna
Oh,
be
some of them
warm.
don't own coats. They're like, this is
they're
fine.
in their hoodie.
Um,
They're like, I'm
they're
fine.
just,
I'm
yeah,
fine. Seriously,
they're
I'm
brave
not cold.
warriors. Yeah, they know what they're doing. They're so seasoned. Like that was honestly, besides the fact that it was winter time, I was so glad that the first tour was with them because they know how to do everything. Like they are totally like, you know, they just made everything as easy as possible and there was nothing not thought of. Like they have all these spreadsheets, they're very organized and
Yeah.
they know where all the best restaurants are, like in every town that we went
That's sick.
to.
That's
And
sick.
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
I think that's also interesting too, playing in like the winter. Sorry, I keep going back to this because I'm just thinking like Biko. Like, what if it was like a Biko type situation, Maddie, and then just
oh
like
my
in the
God.
winter, like I can't like in the winter somewhere else. Like, did you guys ever play like garages or anything? Like just in like the dead of winter or something? Like that's just crazy. I don't know. Was it mostly clubs? Like,
It was mostly clubs. We did
okay,
play, there was a garage in I think like Santa Fe
Oh,
or
that would,
Albuquerque or something. But at
okay.
that point, it was
It's
like not so bad.
yeah. I
Like
was gonna
once
say
we
it's
got
not
into
that
the
bad over there.
Southwest, it was way better. And
Hmm.
at that point, I think um, it was we had just been so cold that like 5 degrees difference was like really significant. And
Yeah.
going through California was fine. Like California was
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I had a bad time in California because I lost my voice, and that was
Oh
like
no.
maybe that's my tour horror story. I lost
Yeah.
my
that
voice in
happens here.
California.
What
So
did
every like it started in San Francisco,
no.
and I remember like sitting there right before we played in San Francisco, like is something happening?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting a cold. And then the next day we did a show in Oakland. We did 2 shows in Oakland. And the first one I was like, my voice is going. And then that night we played like one of the biggest shows of tour and it was just gone. It was gone.
No.
It was horrible. But at least I wasn't cold. I was just like
Yeah.
so depressed that I couldn't sing. And
Yeah.
and I had to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's wild.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
a fan question.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Sorry.
Um,
See, that's what I'm talking about with the tangents. I just like
No,
yeah.
I love it though.
well,
That was good. That
this
was really entertaining to me.
this one could be a tangent because we haven't really talked about fandom here, but we know you're a big fan of Kranky, and you know you've released albums on the label. But what's it like having your releases for your label just be mastered by James Plotkin?
Oh yeah. Well, I sought him out because The Joy of Disease is one of my favorite records. I think that that album is brilliant. And I know that he does mastering. He's mastered some records for friends of mine, and they all came out really wonderful. And I thought like, okay, this person is definitely going to get what I want to get out of this. So I hit him up and had him do both of those, and he was really lovely and very easy to work with. Like he pretty much immediately got what it was that I wanted, and you know it came out great, and I was really happy to even just get to email with him because I think he's really brilliant.
Yeah,
So yeah, it was great. I'm definitely a fan of his for sure.
that's awesome. Maddie, I don't know if we like full on asked this question, but I kind of want to ask it just because it's kind of funny.
Oh
But
yeah.
so all of your albums kind of just like deal with this like shade of purple. Is that your favorite color?
No, I don't think I have a favorite color, but I do love purple. I think
Yeah,
that it's beautiful, and I know I've kind of I've said this in other places before where I've tried to steer away from purple just to see like, okay, well maybe this will be like a blue toned album,
yeah,
and then somehow I end up tweaking things, and I'm just like, oh, it's purple again. How
yeah,
did we get here? I just, yeah, I don't know. I'm just really drawn to it. I think that it's a beautiful color. When I see it in the world, I'm always immediately drawn to it.
yeah.
I think that it complements what I do really well, and
Mhm.
I've kind of, you know, I like to have artwork and things have some degree of continuity. So
Mhm.
somehow that's ended up being with the color palette so far. Who knows what's next? Maybe my blue period is next.
Yeah.
I don't know what's gonna happen, but
So
I do think purple is beautiful. I wouldn't call it a favorite color because I don't know that I have a favorite, but
you always just end up there.
I'm
Yeah.
definitely into
Yeah.
it.
I was gonna ask too, you said you were a designer earlier when we were in the interview. So do you design all of your own artwork for your albums and stuff like that? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
sick.
I do.
That's awesome. So Maddie, should we jump into another one?
I guess, yeah,
We have one more left, I think, right? Oh no, we have a couple. So
um okay, here you go. I mean, it's about your radio show, about what you've been doing on that aspect.
oh
Could
yeah.
you enlighten us a little bit about that?
Yeah, like what's it called? What's your station? Call letters,
Yeah.
what is your show about and how can people tune in?
Okay. Well, it's called Night Gallery, and as of this summer, I've been doing it for 10 years because I started it the summer semester of 2011.
Wow, that's
And
sick. I love that.
it
That's
was
awesome.
really just like I had friends who DJ'd it's at WTUL, which is the college station out of Tulane University in New Orleans.
Okay.
And I had friends who DJ'd there, and I really like the station. They have, it's really eclectic, and a lot of the DJs have been around for a really long time and
Hmm.
have a lot of really like cool niche programs. But when I started it, I hadn't really like caught any shows where they're playing the kind of stuff that I necessarily listen to on my own time.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, okay, well, I can do a show, and they didn't have an experimental show, so I wanted to start an experimental show. And so it's officially the like specialty show for experimental music on the
That's
station.
sick.
And my first show
Whoa.
was like 3 to 6 a.m. on, what was it, Sunday mornings,
Yeah,
which is brutal.
that
Drive
was like
I
time.
one
think I
of
didn't,
mine, yeah.
yeah, I didn't break midnight until I had been doing it for like 4 or 5 years, I think.
Nice.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah. Wow, that's actually a
Now
really long
it's
time. Oh my
Friday nights
God.
at 8 p.m. like yours. Your show
Yeah.
is Friday night at 8 p.m. So is mine.
Heck yeah. Um,
Um, yeah, and I switch off. I have a co-DJ, DJ Prodfather, who's been doing it with me for a few years, who is also an experimental musician and has his own approach. And I think like between the two of us, like we cover some interesting ground in this zone of music.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's really like just kind of become its own thing. At first, I was like, oh, this is an experimental show. I'm gonna do just this, but like that's such a broad um term.
Oh
It
yeah.
gives me a lot of
Yeah.
freedom to do a lot of things.
You
So
can
at
do
this
whatever with
point,
that, yeah.
yeah, I consider that a pretty loose box. Like I don't limit myself anymore as far as like stylistic boundaries. I just kind of I play what I want, and there was a
Yeah.
period of time where I was like only playing new music, and then there was a period of time where I was only playing old music, and now I do a pretty good mix of both. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's been 10 years. That's a long time to be
That's
doing a radio show, but
Wow.
I'm still at it.
that's inspirational. I hope to continue doing radio for that long as well too.
How
Um,
long have you guys been doing it?
Two
me
years now,
maybe
actually.
yeah,
Yeah, formally been on air for 2 years.
yeah, so maybe
Nice.
three for me then if Maddie's at two. Yeah.
And oh man, I
Cool.
love doing those 3 hour blocks. This has been a blast to go
Yeah.
through, trust me.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I'm really looking forward to getting back into the studio. At least I really hope that because like right now it's either like remote and they're starting to introduce some in person, and I really hope that because I'm kind of far from Santa Barbara that they'll let me do some in person and some remote, kind of divided. We'll see if that'll even
That's
be
the
possible.
dream.
See, that
Yeah.
would be the dream, if I have a band that's like, we really want to go in studio, I'd be like, yes, please. I love in studio, and then, it's also great because we can do remote. I don't know. Anyways, that was a tangent for me too, but but anyways, yeah, that's awesome. We're big fans of your radio show and stuff, and we feel you with the early morning. I think my first show time was 4 to 6 a.m. During the
I
week, so it was like, I'd go to class, or I'd go to my radio show 4 to 6 a.m. and I'd be like, dude, I got class in a couple hours now,
well,
and
I
so
requested
yeah.
also to do Crankcast at 7, where I was gonna get up and play cranky music at 7 a.m. and I did that consistently
Yeah,
until
dude.
COVID
Yeah, Maddie
on
had a
Oh my
cranky
Fridays.
themed
goodness.
radio show for a while. Yeah, that was
That
sick.
was so much fun.
Is there a cranky radio show?
I was the person running that.
Yeah, at our
I
station,
go
Oh,
out
that's
yeah.
and
cool.
get the CDs and stuff. I found great stuff at swap meets, so yes.
And then
This
That's
seeing this
awesome.
all connect, this is it's been so glad fun.
I think that dude, like the person that runs Cranky also has an NTS show, I think too, which is pretty
Oh yeah,
sick.
Oh
Brian.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, Kranky is co-run by Joel Loschke and Brian Foote, and Brian does the NTS show. It's once a month. And he's been doing it for at least
Mhm.
2 or 3 years
Oh
now.
wow, I didn't
And
know it was
yeah, I
happening.
always tune in. I think it's really excellent. He does a good job of, they'll play obviously new Kranky releases, but
Yeah.
like kind of finding all these connected, um, you know, former Kranky artists, new projects, and like things that kind of like tie into new albums
Mm-hmm.
that are, a few degrees away. And it's always really interesting.
And then I know Brian does stuff with the Ambient Church, which is such a wonderful venue for
Oh
doing
really?
music.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. Oh, I didn't know he did stuff in the
Yeah.
ambient church too. That's sick.
Yeah,
S-
yeah, they had their anniversary shows in ambient church in a few cities. I know Chicago they did some, and in New York and maybe LA. I can't
Grouper
remember.
played
It
the
was
LA
actually,
one.
yeah, it
yeah.
was when I was on tour in 2018 that they were doing those shows. So they
Oh,
were kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Anyways, so I think that just about does it for the questions we had drafted up and stuff. We actually do have one left though. And we
this
ask
just came in.
yeah, yeah, right. We
Okay.
we ask everybody this question. This is one for everybody on the show answers it. So it's kind of a big one. Are you ready for it?
No, go ahead.
You
Okay.
do it, Thomas.
So, a rat is going to jump into your mouth. Do you want this rat to jump into your mouth head first, or do you want this rat to jump into your mouth butt first, and why? And if you need us to lay out the scenario about how a rat can like go backwards into your mouth, I can lay it out
Mhm.
for you if you want.
Yeah, I wanted to go ahead first.
Why?
I don't know why. I feel like um probably if it's gonna jump into my mouth, it just wants to see what's up, so it
Yeah.
can more easily do that head first, and then it can leave me alone, and we could just hang out or whatever it is that would happen next. If the rat wants to go, then that's
He
great.
can
But
go.
head first.
That was actually a really nice answer. I love that. Yeah, most people
Cool.
don't. Most people are just like afraid of the rat and they just want to hurt it instantly. Just end.
Oh no.
Yeah, but I love how you were just like, the rat's probably friendly, it has good intentions, it really just wants to see what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
Let it see what's going
Yeah.
on, let it go about its day, and then we're all happy at the end, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
That,
I'm not gonna eat the rat, so you
yeah.
know
I'm just
that's
curious, are are
that's a
you,
given.
are you vegan by chance?
I am, yes.
Oh, are you? Oh, sick.
Oh,
Okay, heck yeah. You can always like, I feel like you always get a sense of like if people are like vegan or vegetarian slash if they're not with the answers that they give. So I really,
Yeah.
yeah, it's always the vegan people that like say the nice like, I don't want to hurt it, type answers.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've only been vegan since that tour with Thou because, like I said, they know all the good restaurants and
Yeah,
half of them are vegan. So we ended up just eating at all these amazing vegan restaurants. And it started out like, I'm just going to be vegan for this tour. And then afterward, I was like, that was easy. I'm just
yeah,
going to keep doing it. And I've just been doing it ever since.
that's
So,
sick.
yeah.
Yeah, I aspire to be at least vegetarian at some point. Maddie, how are you faring after the co-ops? Like, are you still
oh,
eating like co-op diet?
no, we're not doing well at all.
Maddie,
That's
neither am I, and it's the biggest bummer, dude. It's always hard.
I
So,
blame my parents. That's all I will say.
yeah, we lived at a co-op. We both lived at co-ops when we were in Santa Barbara, and it's like,
We ate
uh,
vegan.
yeah, we eat vegan because like we cook like collective dinners for the entire house, and it's like if one person's vegan, then you obviously have to make the entire meal vegan. So it's pretty much like you just eat vegan when you live at a co-op. And then it's like since I
Yeah.
moved back, I tried to hold on to that because I was like, this is good for me, I'm not consuming a lot
This
of
is great
meat.
food.
And
It's
then it's
delicious.
yeah, it's like right now I'm at my parents and they eat so much meat and I was holding out strong for a long time, but it's kind of overtaken me. It's kind of a bummer. Um,
It's hard with the parents. Yeah.
yeah, you know what I'm
I
saying? It
somehow
really
have managed
is.
to like get my parents to, or at least, to try to cook food that I can eat. And I think my mom is really on board with the idea because she's been experimenting more with recipes, and it gives
Yeah,
her kind of like something to challenge herself with trying to make food for me.
yeah,
But like my mom is from Cuba, my dad is from New Orleans, and like both of those like food traditions are like
Yeah.
super meat heavy,
yeah.
and at first it wasn't that easy. And actually, this isn't my first like foray into meatlessness. Like I did, I was vegetarian for a while years ago, and they were not ready for it then. They were not
Yeah.
prepared, and they just
Yeah.
like couldn't. Like my mom would make me green beans, and she'd be like, "Oh yeah, it's vegetarian," and I'd see like bacon in it, and she'd like, "Oh
Oh
yeah,
my
there's bacon in it too."
gosh.
Like, well then it's not vegetarian.
That's
I
That is
mean,
so
now she like totally gets it. But back then it was just like for some reason it hadn't. We weren't there yet. Like it wasn't going
Yeah.
to happen at that time. And I stopped being vegetarian when I was on a trip, and I was in like a hostel, and they were like, "Our dinner tonight is sausage, and that's the only food that we have." So I was like, "I guess I'm having sausage tonight." And after that, I just went back to eating meat.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough. It's tough with the parents, especially if you're living there, because every meal that they make,
Yes,
like
dude. Yes. And
it's
it's
it's not the same as just like, oh, I'm gonna come by every couple of weeks and you'll make me one
yeah.
vegan meal. It's like there has to be vegan food in the house like all the time, and if
Yeah.
you're the only one in the house, then it's just yeah, it's
It's
tough.
easy.
It's tough,
And
and
they're very
I think
scared.
that
Yeah.
They're very scared
oh
of
yeah,
making meals like
It
that, and they don't
yeah,
realize like it's actually better and kind of just owns.
yeah, seriously. And like my girlfriend is like vegetarian and she's been able to hold out strong. She's been doing it before the co-ops and coming when she like stays here, my mom's always like my mom and dad put an effort into like cooking, some kind of option for her, which I think is cool, but it's still like so hard for them to like grasp. And you always get that question. You can eat fish, right? There's always that question.
oh yeah, yeah.
I don't
Like
know
wait,
if you
fish isn't meat. Like, well,
Yeah, exactly. We always get that
kind of
question
meat.
like yeah, it's interesting. Anyways,
Yeah, yeah. It's tough, especially, if you're stuck inside all the time and you're not like going out to restaurants, like they have to cook every single meal and
yeah.
have it be, in line with this lifestyle. But I found it to not be that difficult. Um in in New Orleans, I mean in California it's probably been this way for a while, but New Orleans didn't really get a lot of good vegan restaurants until a couple years
Oh,
ago, which was great
Oh,
timing for me. But there's some really, really, really good vegan food in New Orleans now. Like
yeah.
all kinds of food, not just,
we
health
did it.
food, but like
Yeah.
soul food and like fake fried chicken and fake seafood,
That's
and
sick
it's
actually.
just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
pizza, it's
That's how it
anything
is.
that you would want.
Yeah.
Um, so there's not like a huge amount of restaurants, it's not like it is in California where
Yeah.
it's kind of like, they're everywhere, but
Yeah.
just to have something is really nice.
Yeah, especially in LA, there's a lot. Me and Jess will always go to like cool like vegan restaurants in LA, but I'm from a small conservative town right now, at least I'm in, and so there's
Mm.
nothing. And the most like I guess any like grocery store that we can find like I mean, I guess it's all plant-based, but if you're looking for like any other options or something, the closest thing we'd have is the Sprouts or something like
Oh yeah.
anyways. But so yeah, that was a lot of fun, Melissa. I think that's about all we have for the show and stuff. We want to thank you again for being on. It was a lot of fun. And I want to thank all of our listeners for tuning into TBD on KCSB FM 91.9 in Santa Barbara every Sunday 4 to 6 p.m. and Nettnett Radio every Saturday 8 p.m. Again, like I said, this is MJ Guider. Thanks for being on the show, Melissa.
Thanks for having me.